For decades, the standard protocol at Skinwalker Ranch was to look up. Millions of viewers, independent researchers, and government investigators fixated on the desert sky, tracking high-velocity orbs, transient radar signatures, and bizarre atmospheric distortions. The assumption was simple and comforting. Whatever governed this 512-acre stretch of Utah land was visiting from somewhere far across the cosmos. But buried deep within the confidential logs of the scientific team was a growing, terrifying counter-hypothesis, suggesting that the aerial phenomena were merely secondary emissions, venting from a massive, artificial structure hidden directly beneath the desert floor. The legends of the Uinta Basin had warned of subterranean secrets for centuries. Native Ute tradition spoke of forbidden underground passages beneath the Mesa, passages that sealed away ancient, non-human entities and strange energies that were never meant to mingle with the surface world. While modern science traditionally dismissed tribal folklore as allegorical myth, high-density seismic imaging and ground-penetrating radar sweeps conducted across the ranch began returning structural signatures that made those ancient stories impossible to ignore. Embedded deep within the sandstone bedrock of the Mesa sat a continuous, dense anomaly that defied every known principle of natural geology. The breakthrough came during a targeted heavy drilling operation into the heart of the Mesa. Heavy machinery clearing tons of fractured rock struck a layer of subterranean material that refused to crumble under standard hydraulic pressure. When the drill crew brought in a heavy diamond-tipped rotary bit to penetrate the obstruction, the mechanical drill string ground to a violent halt. Flushing the borehole with specialized endoscopic optical cameras, the monitoring screens inside the command trailer lit up with an image that halted the entire operation, a curved, engineered metallic hull embedded deep within the solid rock matrix. This was no natural ore deposit or geological formation. The visible surface of the structure was flawlessly smooth, composed of a dark, non-reflective composite material that showed zero signs of oxidation, wear, or geological crushing despite the immense weight of the mountain pressing down upon it. Elemental analysis of the microscopic scrapings brought up by the drill bit revealed an exotic titanium aluminum ceramic alloy, an engineered material manufactured with microscopic precision that does not exist anywhere in nature. As principal investigator Eric Bard and astrophysicist Dr. Travis Taylor calibrated their baseline diagnostic instruments over the open borehole, the physical environment surrounding the excavation site reacted violently. The baseline magnetometers deployed around the Mesa pegged their scales, registering a localized magnetic surge that localized directly around the drill site. Simultaneously, every spectrum analyzer locked onto the infamous 1.6 GHz radio frequency, not with static noise, but with a pristine, high-amplitude digital carrier wave broadcasting directly out of the mountain. The scientists hadn't simply stumbled upon a geological curiosity or a buried piece of space debris. They had struck a sealed subterranean object, a massive metallic craft or installation encased deep within the ancient stone of the Mesa. Standing at the threshold of the drill site, listening to the low-frequency hum vibrating through the solid stone floor, the team realized that decades of looking to the sky had been a distraction. The core secret of Skinwalker Ranch was buried directly beneath their feet, and for the first time in human history, the physical proof was finally in plain sight. With the 1.6 GHz digital carrier wave pulsing steadily out of the Mesa borehole, the scientific team suspended all active drilling operations. The risk of causing mechanical damage to the object or triggering a catastrophic physical reaction from an unknown power source was simply too high. Instead, Chief Scientist Eric Bard and Dr. Travis Taylor transitioned the investigation to passive diagnostic scanning and multispectral tomography, aiming to map the full dimensions of the metallic structure without disturbing the delicate balance of the mountain. The first step was deploying an ultra-sensitive seismic array and microgravity sensors around the entire perimeter of the Mesa Ridge. By placing high-frequency acoustic emitters on the rock face and measuring how sound waves traveled through the stone, the geophysicists hoped to create a detailed three-dimensional shadow map of the subterranean interior. But as the preliminary data processed inside the command trailer, the computer modeling software flagged an anomaly that left the team speechless. Sound waves traveling through the natural sandstone traveled at predictable speeds until they hit the region immediately surrounding the borehole. There, the acoustic signals didn't scatter or absorb. They reflected back with pristine, mirror-like uniformity, outlining an impossible geometric contour. The object buried inside the Mesa was colossal. It was not a fragmented piece of meteoric iron or an isolated metallic slab. The seismic tomography revealed a continuous, symmetrical disc-shaped craft spanning over 150 feet in diameter, gently sloped at the edges and thickest at its center. Even more disturbing was the spatial relationship between the craft and the surrounding mountain. The stone immediately encasing the object was not crushed or fractured as it would be from an ancient impact or geological shift. Instead, the craft rested within a perfectly fitted subterranean vault, as if the rock had been melted, molded, or displaced around the hull by extreme directional energy before solidifying into an airtight protective shell. Determined to analyze the physical properties of the craft's outer hull, the team lowered a specialized micro-inspection assembly down the narrow drill shaft. Equipped with high-definition optical lenses, ultraviolet laser scanners, and non-contact electromagnetic probes, the sensor package slowly descended through the dark 6-inch hole. At 80 feet below the surface, the camera cleared the rough sandstone walls and met the smooth surface of the object. Under the intense glare of the ultraviolet floodlights, the metallic hull did not reflect light in a standard diffuse pattern. The composite surface exhibited an iridescent, fluid-like sheen, absorbing specific light frequencies while scattering others in organized geometric bands. When the electromagnetic probe touched the surface of the hull to measure electrical conductivity, the baseline instrumentation inside the trailer recorded an instantaneous physical event. The temperature inside the narrow borehole plummeted. Within seconds, ambient air readings dropped from 25 degrees Celsius down to negative 15 degrees Celsius, causing flash frost to form along the glass lens of the inspection camera. Yet, there was no liquid nitrogen or refrigerant present. The object was operating as a massive thermal heat sink, rapidly pulling thermal energy out of the open shaft and converting it into a localized electromagnetic field. Simultaneously, the handheld gaussmeters held by the crew at the surface began to fluctuate rhythmically. The magnetic field surrounding the drill site didn't just increase in magnitude. It began to pulse in precise 4-second intervals, sending low-frequency electromagnetic waves radiating outward through the rock face. In the surface command trailer, Eric Bard tracked the path of these underground energy pulses on the ranch's perimeter sensors. The magnetic waves were not dispersing randomly into the surrounding desert. They were traveling along a tight, linear vector through the deep bedrock, pointing directly from the core of the mesa toward the exact center of the infamous triangle sector. The object inside the mesa was not dead, dormant, or inert. Breaching the stone shell with the diamond drill bit had completed an electrical bridge, waking up an internal monitoring system that was now actively communicating with the atmospheric anomaly hovering 5,000 feet in the air. As the team watched the real-time energy channels lock into alignment between the mesa and the triangle, they realized that every strange event recorded over the property for decades was tied to this singular underground machine. And to uncover what lay inside its metallic hull, they were going to have to go deeper than ever before. The realization that the metallic object inside the mesa was actively communicating with the triangle sector completely altered the team's operational plan. They were no longer dealing with an ancient, forgotten relic buried beneath desert dust. They were interacting with a functional, high-energy technological system that was reacting in real time to human intrusion. To map the true operational footprint of the underground craft, Dr. Travis Taylor and Eric Bard brought in an advanced mobile Muon tomography unit, a cutting-edge technology that utilizes natural cosmic ray particles passing through the Earth to map subterranean densities with pinpoint, sub-meter accuracy. Because cosmic ray muons pass easily through soil and lightstone but are scattered or absorbed by dense metals and exotic matter, muon detectors can reveal detailed internal structures deep inside solid rock without firing a single drill bit or explosive charge. For 3 days, the specialized detector panels ran continuously at the base of the mesa, capturing millions of high-energy particle tracks passing down through the mountain from deep space. When the raw particle data was processed through the supercomputers inside the command trailer, the resulting 3-dimensional render shocked the entire research crew. The image that materialized on the primary monitors was not merely the outer outline of a saucer-shaped craft. The muon tracks penetrated deep through the exotic titanium aluminum hull, revealing a complex, highly organized internal structure. The interior of the 150-foot disc was not hollow, nor was it filled with standard mechanical components like gears, hydraulic lines, or electrical conduits. Instead, the center of the craft featured a massive, perfectly spherical chamber surrounding a dense, non-metallic core. Radiating outward from this central chamber were 6 symmetrical conduits or passageways, leading toward the outer perimeter of the hull. The density signatures within the central sphere were so extreme that cosmic muons were completely deflected around it, creating a distinct, circular data shadow where standard subatomic particles simply could not pass. Physicist Dr. Travis Taylor examined the particle scattering angles with growing intensity. The complete deflection of high-energy muons indicated either a localized gravitational well or an intense, concentrated spatial warping field generated at the very heart of the craft. The central sphere was acting as a localized zero-point or zero-mass core, an advanced energy engine capable of bending spacetime around the structure, neutralizing the immense weight of the Mesa stone pressing down upon it. While the team debated the physics of the central chamber, the physical environment surrounding the Mesa excavation site began to show signs of extreme magnetic saturation. Standing on the rocky ledge near the drill site, team members reported feeling a strange, persistent prickling sensation across their skin, accompanied by a metallic taste in their mouths. Classic symptoms of high-frequency electromagnetic exposure. Superintendent Thomas Winterton noticed that handheld compasses held anywhere within 50 feet of the borehole no longer pointed toward magnetic north. Instead, the needles spun slowly in a continuous counterclockwise direction, tracking a rotating magnetic gradient that was spiraling directly out of the mountain. Determined to measure the frequency modulation coming from the inner chamber, Eric Bard deployed an array of specialized fiber optic audio sensors and piezoceramic vibration probes directly onto the solid rock face of the mesa. When the raw acoustic signals were run through audio amplification software, the ambient silence of the desert gave way to a low rhythmic sound, a deep, mechanical hum vibrating at precisely 8.1 Hz. The 8.1 Hz frequency was significant. It sat squarely within the ELF, extremely low frequency, range matching the primary resonant frequency of the Earth's ionosphere, known as the Schumann resonance. The craft inside the mesa wasn't just generating its own isolated power. It was phase-locked with the natural electromagnetic pulse of the planet itself, tapping directly into the Earth's natural magnetic grid to maintain its power reserves while remaining encased inside hundreds of feet of solid sandstone. As the sunset cast long red shadows over the Uinta Basin, the 8.1 Hz vibration began to harmonize with the persistent 1.6 GHz radio signal broadcasting overhead. On the monitoring screens, the two frequencies locked into a stable mathematical harmonic. Inside the mesa, the machine had completed its internal warm-up sequence, and the team was about to witness a physical reaction that would shatter every assumption ever made about Skinwalker Ranch. The mathematical locking of the 8.1 Hz ELF vibration with the 1.6 GHz radio carrier wave triggered a visible physical reaction across the surface of the mesa. As the dual frequencies stabilized, the surrounding sandstone began to emit a faint piezo-luminescent glow. Microscopic quartz crystals embedded within the rock face, subjected to the immense electromagnetic stress radiating from the buried hull, were converting mechanical and field strain into visible light, painting the dark cliff face in a pale ethereal violet hue. Inside the command trailer, primary communications equipment instantly went haywire. Standard cellular networks collapsed, satellite feeds dropped to zero bandwidth, and encrypted radio channels were filled with rhythmic, high-frequency digital chirps. Chief Scientist Eric Bard scrambled to isolate the primary data receivers, switching all monitoring systems over to direct hardwired fiber optic cables grounded deep into the Earth. The spectrum analyzers confirmed that the 1.6 GHz signal was no longer broadcasting in short, localized bursts. It had expanded into a continuous high-amplitude broadcast, streaming straight up out of the mesa shaft like an invisible electromagnetic pillar. Dr. Travis Taylor gathered the field crew at the edge of the drill site, armed with thermal imaging equipment, high-voltage static meters, and portable magnetometer arrays. As they approached the open borehole, the physical sensations grew dangerously intense. Handheld static meters pegged out at maximum thresholds, indicating an electrostatic potential on the surrounding rock of over 30,000 volts per meter. Yet there was no electric shock upon touching the stone, only a bizarre, cold pressure against the skin. When Dr. Taylor aimed a high-resolution thermal imaging camera down into the dark drill hole, the display captured a thermodynamic phenomenon that defied standard physics. The heat signatures along the upper sandstone shaft showed normal ambient temperatures around 15 degrees Celsius. But as the lens focused past the 80-foot mark onto the visible surface of the titanium aluminum hull, the color spectrum inverted entirely. Surrounding the craft was a perfectly defined ring-shaped thermal void registering at absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Celsius. The space immediately adjacent to the hull was devoid of molecular thermal motion. The craft was drawing every erg of heat out of its immediate surroundings to feed its internal zero-mass core, creating a localized cryogenic envelope that preserved its exotic composite materials against the immense geological pressure of the mesa. While the scientific team documented the thermal void, Superintendent Thomas Winterton noticed a sudden terrifying shift in local gravity. Small pieces of loose gravel, sagebrush leaves, and metal drill shavings surrounding the mouth of the borehole began to twitch. Slowly defying the laws of gravity, the debris lifted off the ground, floating silently in midair 2 to 3 inches above the stone surface. Dr. Taylor dropped a small stainless steel wrench directly over the opening of the drill hole. Rather than falling down the 80-foot shaft under standard gravitational acceleration, the wrench decelerated instantly upon crossing the threshold of the hole. It hovered in the center of the opening, swaying gently as if suspended in thick syrup, before slowly accelerating upward and drifting 3 feet into the air before falling back to the rock floor several yards away. The craft inside the Mesa was actively manipulating local space-time geometry. The zero-mass core mapped by the Muon tomography unit was generating a localized anti-gravitational field, a spatial warp bubble that neutralized gravitational force around the structure. The implications were staggering. The object buried inside the Mesa was not just a landed or crashed vehicle preserved under dirt. It was an active spatial propulsion engine or transit anchor, holding itself in a state of suspended gravitational equilibrium within the Earth's crust. As the team watched the floating debris field expand around the drill site, the 1.6 GHz broadcast suddenly shifted its modulation pattern once again. On the monitors inside the trailer, the clean digital carrier wave split into 6 distinct, parallel subchannels, each subchannel locked to a specific frequency pulse that matched the orientation of the 6 conduits inside the craft's hull. The machine was no longer just idling or maintaining its energy state. It was sending an outbound, multi-channel transmission through the Earth's deep bedrock, signaling 5 other subterranean nodes hidden across the globe that the central hub at Skinwalker Ranch was fully awake. The detection of 6 parallel subchannels broadcasting through the deep bedrock transformed the investigation from a localized excavation into a global scientific crisis. The team inside the command trailer watched in stunned silence as high-frequency ground dipole antennas logged the directional vectors of those subterranean signals. The multi-channel digital pulse was not dispersing randomly into breath. It was traveling along tightly focused, low-loss acoustic and electromagnetic waveguides embedded in the Earth's mantle. Travis Taylor and Eric Bard immediately initiated real-time seismic cross-correlation analysis, mapping the precise planetary trajectories of those 6 signals. The results sent shockwaves through the room. Each of the 6 subchannels was locked onto a specific geographically significant location known for persistent gravitational and electromagnetic anomalies. One vector pointed directly toward the Bermuda Triangle in the North Atlantic. Another aligned with the volcanic roots of the Devil's Sea off the coast of Japan. A third tracked straight down the Andean fault lines toward the high-altitude desert of the Atacama. The craft inside the Mesa was not an isolated artifact. It was functioning as a master relay station, a central command node in an interconnected, planet-wide grid buried miles beneath the Earth's surface. Driven by the need to sample the physical composition of the craft's interior before the energy field stabilized completely, Dr. Taylor authorized the deployment of a specialized micro-rover down the shaft. Built from non-magnetic titanium chassis components and shielded inside a Faraday enclosure, the rover was equipped with a fiber-optic umbilical line, high-frequency radar-penetrating probes, and a miniature laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy (LIBE) sensor. As the miniature rover reached the bottom of the 80-foot shaft and settled onto the exotic hull, its high-definition optical sensors sent back real-time visual feeds that left the team breathless. The surface of the craft was not a solid static sheet of metal. Under the rover's intense halogen spotlights, the titanium-aluminum composite appeared to possess a dynamic biomechanical architecture. Microscopic interlocking plates along the outer hull shifted subtly in response to the 8.1 Hz ELF vibration, flexing like the scales of a living organism. When the rover activated its LIBS sensor, firing a short, high-energy laser pulse at the hull to vaporize a microscopic particle of the surface material for atomic analysis. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. The instant the laser struck the hull, the micro-rover's optical feed flared with a brilliant, blinding cyan light. Rather than scorching or pitting the metal, the composite material absorbed the laser's photon energy entirely, redistributing it across the hull in a liquid wave of pale blue luminescence. Simultaneously, the localized anti-gravitational field around the borehole violently expanded. The micro-rover, weighing nearly 40 pounds on the surface, was violently thrown backward into the upper shaft as gravity inside the hole temporarily inverted, accelerating the craft upward toward the surface opening. The fiber-optic umbilical line snapped instantly, cutting off the visual feed, but the raw data recorded prior to the connection loss revealed a chilling physical reality. The material of the craft was actively adaptive. It possessed an integrated energy deflection matrix that absorbed incoming thermal, kinetic, and electromagnetic stress, converting external energy directly into power for its internal spatial engine. Inside the command trailer, the main spectrum monitors lit up with a catastrophic surge in amplitude. The 6 subterranean signal vectors, previously broadcasting at low baseline levels, ignited into a high-powered synchronized telemetry stream. Deep beneath the Uinta Basin, the ancient machine had misinterpreted the rover's diagnostic laser pulse as a command sequence, initiating an automated boot phase that began pulling raw geothermal and magnetic energy straight out of the Earth's core. The unexpected energy surge from the craft's automated boot phase sent shockwaves vibrating straight up through the Mesa's sandstone strata. Deep inside the mountain, the machine was no longer merely drawing localized thermal energy from the borehole. It was channeling massive currents of raw geothermal and electromagnetic power directly from the planet's core. Across the surface of the ranch, every magnetometer, field sensor, and power monitor pegged at maximum capacity before blowing out their internal fuses. On the cliffs overlooking the excavation site, the ground began to tremble with a strange high-frequency resonance. It wasn't the slow rolling rumble of a natural tectonic earthquake, but a sharp rhythmic hum that made the surrounding rock faces sing like a massive tuning fork. Dr. Travis Taylor and Eric Bard scrambled back to the primary fiber optic monitoring station inside the command trailer, bypassing damaged wireless sensors to receive raw feed from the hardened subterranean sensors still operational. The data streaming onto the main monitors was unbelievable. The zero-mass core at the center of the buried craft had expanded its spatial warp bubble to a radius of nearly 300 feet, encompassing the entire inner section of the mesa. Within this 300-foot zone, standard gravitational acceleration had completely broken down. Seismic sensors embedded deep inside the mountain recorded stone, water, and air density behaving as if the mass of the mesa had dropped to zero. The craft was effectively weightless inside its own self-generated spatial pocket, suspended in the middle of the Earth like a vessel floating in deep space. At the same instant, the optical tracking cameras trained on the airspace over the triangle captured the atmospheric payoff of this subterranean power surge. The invisible boundary known as the bubble, floating 5,000 feet in the air, suddenly ignited into a brilliant, swirling ring of ionization. The pale cyan plasma light that had flashed inside the borehole was now manifesting in the sky overhead, forming a perfectly symmetrical 200-foot wide portal. The 1.6 GHz radio signal had reached a staggering power output, creating a visible, column-like refraction axis in the air that connected the peak of the mesa directly to the glowing ring above the triangle. The 6 subterranean vectors connecting the ranch to anomalies across the globe, from the Bermuda Triangle to the Devil's Sea, were now firing in absolute synchronization. Telemetry logs showed that as energy surged through the mesa core, corresponding electromagnetic spikes were simultaneously recorded by international geophysical monitoring stations along those exact geographical fault lines. The master node beneath Skinwalker Ranch was sending a synchronized activation pulse across the entire planetary grid. Inside the command trailer, the scientists faced an agonizing decision. Breaching the craft with the drill had initiated a process that was rapidly escalating out of control. If the energy buildup continued at its current exponential rate, the localized anti-gravitational field threatened to tear the sandstone structure of the mesa apart from the inside out, exposing the massive craft and releasing its exotic plasma core directly into the open atmosphere. Dr. Taylor immediately directed the field team to deploy a high-voltage grounding array directly into the mouth of the drill shaft. The plan was to fire a series of ultra-short, high-frequency electromagnetic dampening pulses down the hole, a counterphase interference signal designed to disrupt the 8.1 Hz ELF resonance and force the craft's internal power routing back into its low-energy standby state. As the generator coils hummed to life on the surface and the counterpulse was injected straight into the dark stone shaft, the entire valley held its breath. The fate of the investigation and the secret buried deep within the mountain hung on a single dangerous roll of the scientific dice. The injection of the counterphase electromagnetic pulse straight into the heart of the mesa sent a violent, shuddering shockwave through the subterranean architecture. For 3 breathless seconds, the air inside the Uinta Basin cracked with the sound of tearing stone as the 8.1 Hz ELF resonance clashed directly with the artificial dampening signal. Then, with a suddenness that made the ears ring, the system collapsed back into silence. The swirling cyan plasma ring hovering 5,000 feet over the triangle dissolved into the cool desert air. Inside the command trailer, the primary monitors flickered and stabilized as the staggering energy surge receded. Thermal imaging cameras trained on the Mesa borehole recorded the absolute zero temperature envelope around the metallic hull expanding slightly before locking into a stable low-power equilibrium. The floating debris field surrounding the drill site dropped back to the dirt. The 1.6 GHz signal faded into a gentle digital whisper, and the deep, rhythmic hum of the mountain settled into a passive 4-second pulse. The machine beneath Skinwalker Ranch had stepped back from the brink, returning to its ancient hyper-vigilant standby state. The discoveries made during those extraordinary hours have permanently shattered our understanding of human history and planetary science. The phenomenon at Skinwalker Ranch was never a fleeting collection of ghost stories, random UFO sightings, or atmospheric tricks. The ranch is the primary surface anchor for a colossal, hyper-advanced subterranean craft, a self-sustaining spatial transit hub and zero-point energy engine embedded deep within the Earth's crust, holding itself in gravitational balance while maintaining an active communication grid across the globe. Breaching the stone shell of the Mesa didn't just uncover an artifact. It completed an automated diagnostic sequence that had sat waiting in the dark for millennia. The machine inside the Earth is awake. It has mapped the technological footprint of modern civilization, calibrated its systems to our electromagnetic spectrum, and demonstrated beyond shadow of a doubt that the most profound secrets of the cosmos are not orbiting among distant stars, but waiting quietly beneath our feet. As the morning sun casts its golden light across the sandstone cliffs of the Mesa, the scientific team stands at the dawn of a new era. The barriers between fringe speculation, theoretical physics, and hard empirical truth have been permanently erased. The quest to fully understand the entity buried inside the mountain is only just beginning, and what lies ahead will redefine humanity's place on this planet forever. If this incredible journey into the buried craft beneath Skinwalker Ranch expanded your mind, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a step as this groundbreaking investigation continues to unfold. Now we want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe the craft inside the Mesa was built by an ancient, highly advanced Earth civilization, or is it part of an extraterrestrial planetary network? Drop your theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay curious.